Hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is Rise of the Phoenix. This will be the fourth and final part to my in-depth commander itemization / gearing guide, whatever you want to call it. This part will focus on commanders like Theoden, Eomer, Eowyn, Gil-galad, Gothmog, anybody who buffs troops and kind of makes their living off of increasing the strength of a particular type of unit, whether that be elves, orcs, mounted units, dwarves, whatever it is. This is going to talk about those guys. I don't have like a cool name for them. We have like damage dealing commanders, support commanders, and then I guess we'll call them leaders. The game calls them leaders, we'll call them leaders. That's what this video will focus on. Before we get into it, if you enjoy my content, please do consider liking this video and subscribing to my channel. Welcome back, everyone. I rattled off a few names of these leader-style commanders. Of course, I forgot to mention Khaldun in my short list earlier. There's a bunch of these types of commanders in the game. I'm going to use Theoden as an example because he's probably one of the most ubiquitous. Him and Khaldun, and potentially Gorbag. But if you want to know, is your commander a leader? Well, the first thing you could do is actually check whether or not they're a leader under their stats, if they have this little guy here. But in general, I prefer looking at skill trees, as sometimes the in-game little title things, traits, whatever you want to call them, sometimes those can be deceiving, particularly in the case of like Aragorn, King of Men, who I think is more of a damage dealer than a leader. What you want to look for is buffs for specific troops. So Rohirrim affects mounted units. We have Riding Excellence affecting mounted units. Eored Leader, mounted units. Horsemaster, mounted units. I think you get the picture. Khaldun has a lot of things that affect evil men. Gorbag has things that affect orcs. So leaders like that really like buffing up specific types of units to try and extract the most value out of that type of unit. So how do we go about itemizing these guys? It's actually probably the most straightforward case of itemization in my opinion. So for a weapon slot, you can usually pick up an attack bonus. So in the case of, actually most of these guys, so in the case of like Eowyn, potentially Theoden, Eomer, Khaldun, any of the Dwarven guys, if they're going to be running like a bunch of Guardians and Ram Riders. Melee attack bonus is very strong on them, so a Cutlass is a good option. If you're the evil side, you can look for like an Easterling Spear, in Khaldun's case, as that will increase the attack of evil men. Potentially even a Carver on some of the evil commanders, increasing the attack of evil men if you're going to be running evil men on that commander. So I think picking up an attack bonus is very good. The other thing that you want to look for, particularly in the case of the Rohirrim commanders, is potentially a Reach of the Rittermark with Might of Cavalry. I think for Eowyn and Eomer, a Cutlass is actually better if you're going to be running full melee cavalry to take full advantage of that damage bonus. Theoden already gives his guys a whole bunch of base damage anyway. So a Reach of the Rittermark, I think, is actually a very viable choice on him with Might of Cavalry. But in general, you're going to want to look for an attack bonus or a buff to that particular type of unit. Another example, I don't have one of these, but just to use it as an example, is actually the Warhammer. So if you're using one of the Dwarven commanders, giving some extra defense to your dwarves can be perfectly good, in my opinion, perfectly viable. As far as the chest piece goes, once again, we're going to want to look for something that will increase the stat of our unit of choice. So Scale Mail, I think, could be a very popular choice, as it increases the defense of melee units, all melee units. In the case of the Rohirrim commanders in particular, the Scout's Mail with either Deafness, this will pump up your damage a little bit more via the Rohirrim title, or you can look for something like Shroud. to help keep your guys alive. As far as the scale mail goes, melee vigor would be a very decent choice, very respectable choice on this item. Pull out melee vigor in case anybody doesn't know what it does. Yeah, I think I said that right. In case anybody's never seen melee vigor before somehow playing this game. For evil side, the superior halberd is a fine choice as well. This actually gives all of your units defense and increases your might, and it can also come with shroud, which is a very respectable effect. So just look for like might boosts to increase the damage of your guys, and look for some type of defense boost on the chest piece for the type of units that you'll be using, since the chest pieces do not come with any offensive stats. For the helmet slot, I think Army HP via the Bone Mask is very good, or via the Brutal Helm. For the Rohirrim commanders, the clear-cut winner, in my opinion, is the Horseman's Helm. This guy can come with Madness immunity or Stun immunity based on what you are worried about facing. If you're worried about a bunch of Saurons, pick up Madness immunity. If you're worried about a bunch of Witch Kings, go for the Stun immunity so that he can't just like obliterate your army in round one. You could really honestly keep one of each of these if you have the budget for that, and switch between it based on what you have scouted, or what reports you've looked at, sort of what you've seen. As far as the evil side, I don't remember all of the helms that they get. I feel like they have a helm, it might be a gold though, that like has a chance to give orcs specifically stun immunity. I think that could be very viable as well. But just look for something to either like increase your army's health a little bit, or just like in the case of support commanders, these guys are relying, these leader commanders are relying on their army to deal damage. So picking up some type of anti-crowd control is also a very respectable option. You could even go a little bit crazy and throw in some crowd control of your own via Hysteria or via Dread on the Brutal Helm. What else can this guy get? Melee Vigor, Urukai Vigor. Yeah, I think anything but Devastate on the Brutal Helm has its place. So just figure out that based on what you have and what you're fighting and what you want to add to your army via the helmet slot. And moving on to accessories, in the case of evil, I think picking up Drums of Moria for the melee army attack is very, very good. I looked between the videos, and actually it's in one of the battle reports. Why don't I just go ahead and pull it up? PvP. Is it this one? Yeah. Bone Talisman. I don't like this that much compared to the drums. Like, there was one of my other videos in this series, I was like, I know I'm forgetting an evil purple accessory. This is what it was that I was forgetting. I don't particularly like this over the drums because you're missing out on that base attack, which I think is super important. However, if you don't have drums that you want to use, then you can throw the Bone Talisman in there. For good side, I think the Hithlane is very powerful, giving army HP. It can also come with some healing. In general, on these commanders, I'm not a huge fan of the Smoking Pipe. Like, what's Eowyn gonna do with some, like, a little bit more healing? Or what's Theoden gonna do with a little bit more healing? I feel like you're going to get more value out of increasing your army's HP, because those commanders already have healing of their own, and the healing is going to be based on the health of your units. So if you're increasing your army's HP via your accessory, then you're actually going to get more of a benefit from their innate healing. If your commander doesn't have healing on their own, then you could potentially pick up Smoking Pipe with Sustain for a little bit more durability in your army, I guess you would say, a little bit more staying power, as it were. And I think that rounds out the accessory slots, just because I really don't like the Harp of Lorien. I mean, I guess if you get one with Sustain or If you're running Gil-galad and you get an Elves Strength one, then yeah, it's probably fine. In general, I just think this army speed Elves is a bit wasted. And the Wizard's Fireworks on most of these commanders I don't think is particularly good, because most of these commanders, if we think about the list, Eowyn is going to want melee units. Theoden is going to probably have at least 2 slots of his army be melee. Khaldun is going to be running likely full melee if he's running Corsair, Dragoon, Halberd. Maybe replace one of those with Fallen. Black Serpent is going to be running full melee. Gorbag, I guess you might run Arbalests on him, but even still, you're going to be running, maybe like Reaper, Raider, Crusher. Same with like Gothmog. So I think like in almost every single case, except like Gil-galad, he's kind of the odd man out here. These commanders are going to be running mostly or exclusively melee units, in which case the Wizard's Firework is not a good option. If the commander is like Gil-galad and you're running double ranged unit, by all means, pick up the Wizard's Firework for army attack. And let's see, running out of time in the video. Let's just double check to make sure I didn't forget any items. I'll say for the third and the last time, the Hobbit Fiddle is just super bad, in my opinion. And yeah, I think I remembered everything that I wanted to talk about. So we'll did not mean to click on that. We'll do the super fast rundown. So weapon slot, you're going to want to look for damage and or some type of buff for the types of units that you're going to be running. For example, mounted might, melee might, that sort of thing. For the chest slot, you're going to want to look probably for some might as well as a defensive stat that applies to those particular types of units. For the helm slot, you can do army HP and or a crowd control effect and or an anti-crowd control effect. So maybe you'll pick up a helm with madness, or you'll pick up a helm that counters madness or stun. Then in the accessory slot, I think army HP is good. If you're evil, I think melee attack via the drums is also good. If by some crazy reason you're running double ranged unit on Gil-galad, like maybe even Arwen running 2 elven ranged units, you could pick up ranged army attack in that slot. Otherwise, you can just try and grab a little bit more healing to add that sustainability to your army. All right, that's it for this video, guys. Let me know what you think about my opinions on commander itemization for support commanders down in the comment section below. I'll see you in the next one. Rise of the Phoenix, over and out.